eternally patient to get to this interview. And their patience, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have with us today the one and only Sacha Stone and Commander-in-Chief, Russell-J. Gould. Welcome to Forecastles and Making Life Brighter. It's like 12:44 in the morning on April 14th for Sacha Stone. And so thank you for coming and being with us at this hour. That's very kind of you, and to be patient through all these tech issues that we have. We have a little feedback here. And so, gentlemen, we are going to explore the now space today. And you two coming together is groundbreaking, and groundbreaking for people everywhere, because we're going to compare notes from the actual quantum field and the spiritual quantum as well. This is something that we've been eager to talk about and eager to jump into. And so those that have followed along know that my background is in quantum healing and the physics of quantum. And we also know that Sacha is on an amazing trajectory right now, daily with his shows. And he is showing up as this way shower for humanity. He's coming into his very special broadcasts that are live, and it is two entirely different things that he'll be doing upcoming, even coming to America for a tour. So Sacha, let's jump in really quickly and let's introduce the programs that you are now spearheading, because as the head of the INTJ, you've had that going on for years, Humanitad. Now you're moving into the Leviathan project, the Lazarus project. Let's move into that and talk about that, because what you're doing there is groundbreaking. I've been watching it, I've been following it, and people need to know about this before you come to America for this tour. So let's start there.
Thanks, Winifred. And firstly, I just want to say, lovely seeing you again after many months, and I'm very honored to be speaking with Russell J. Gould, who I hold in enormous esteem and enormous affection. So for me, an absolute delight, and to stay up till the witching hour, I couldn't be happier in such wonderful, illustrious company. So thank you for that. Lazarus Initiative is my swan song. I never thought I'd hear myself say that, but it's really getting on a quarter of a century of banging my head against the ground of being. This for me is really pitting myself at raising as much hell in the nicest possible way as, in the course of 1 year, to do the rounds, bring together what I deem to be the leading faces, voices, influences, icons, archetypes that I have access to, from all professions and disciplines, all standing in pure truth variously, and all conducting right action in their areas of focus. So in the course of this next year, it'll be hundreds and hundreds of conversations with remarkable people. There will be a series of 12 major symposiums on the 21st of each month, which will be broadcast. And it will be 12 editions of the Lazarus Journal, which will be the written word aggregating this wisdom of ages through the minds and the hearts and the foci of all of these great and good people. What are we doing with the Lazarus Initiative? We're looking to engender the only conversation that matters, the one that sees us through our archaeo-cosmological genesis into the status quo, and then into the mechanics of so-called ascension or ascendancy, the alpha and the omega, and really to be able to step out of the dualistic, binarized, cult-programmed, civilizational dystopia that we have all been genetically bred into, and to resurrect ourselves from within the thrall of this Luciferic dream spell, which is quaint and beautiful and awful at the same time. But the point being, this dualistic playground, this vaudeville that we see in the course of the last year, tells us squarely that we have reached the end of the experiment. We've we've reached the end of evil empire, or the evil empire is about to do unto itself. I mean, Russell J. Gould is the one man alive who's able to speak to the true mechanics of how that plays out as it relates to the disentangling and the dissolution of the spells and the bonds, because it all comes down to the spells and the bonds. Lazarus Initiative is my effort at dealing with the spells and the bonds with one fatal blow.
Very good. Very good. Well, you are also on this tour to America. I don't know where our echo is coming in, but you're on this tour to America, and this is going to be a nonstop, all-in event. So let's just cover that quickly because people will want to know. And let's go to where they can find you for that tour. First up.
Indeed, the tour is the progenitor of the tour is Robert David Steele, the former spy in a basement, very dear friend of mine, and a very, very brilliant mind. And it was his idea, which really issued off the back of a tour that he and former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney did in 2017, the hashtag Unrig. And it's really, that was the genesis point. But this tour is bringing together variously Robert David Steele, Sheriff Mack, myself, Lee Dundas, Cynthia McKinney, and a number of other great folks coast to coast America. About 200, I anticipate, of the leading icons, including Russell, are being invited to participate variously on that tour and take the soapbox. Because we have to triangulate, finally, the holonomic conversation has to be had by us, not fed to us, not cult programmed, but we have to engender that conversation. And it has to do with election rigging, which the whole world has just witnessed in Technicolor. It is to do with the deconstruction of the satanic and luciferic elements of central banking and of ritual satanic abuse, of the disentangling of the fiction from the living. Again, Russell's great area of expertise. But essentially, given the fact that many, if not most, people of Middle Earth today, meaning to say Middle America, Middle Canada, Middle England, are choosing willfully to take a left fork in the road and to worship at the false light, which is to mask themselves against the true light, the light of pure truth. Anyone who chooses to mask themselves against God-given sunlight and oxygen is by definition a Luciferian. They are worshiping false light. They are idolaters of the worst order of magnitude. They are normally quite innocent, innocuous, stupid, suburban people. Understood. I don't have much sympathy for that echelon because that echelon right now is the gravest threat to humankind. So I'm not feeling very friendly toward my stupid friends. I think they are lethal. Their stupidity is abject and is devastatingly dangerous roundabout now.
Oh, yeah.
But it is testament to the fact that we are in this tremendous bifurcation, alchemization phase of the civilization of dystopia. And that is always a powerful and beautiful place, because that is where the spark of regenesis emerges. That's what the tour is all about.
Thank you, Sacha. Thank you for that. And so we are going to explore the now space today, and we are going to take this into the physics and the spirituality of the now space, of which Sacha just talked about. He just opened up into that. It's nice to have you back on the show, and I'm so excited that you're here together. This is really important, and it's important in this now time. When I meditated on this and thought, what is it we need? What do we need to do? We need to have this conversation with you two today, because Sacha, you are a force of nature in oratory entanglements and bringing the truth clear, moving it forward to people with no bars, no confusion of what it is you mean to say and are doing. And that's necessary right now in order to clear the space, the now space, in order to open portals so that the changes can be made and the people can come forward and come together. And Russell, you are the master at the technology of the now space. You are one that works with the now space in your field of alchemy, your field of the grammar, your field of the portals on the planet.
Energy, yes.
You speak to that field. So I want to start there, please.
Okay, well, now space to me is, you have to have knowledge and comprehension of some of the fundamentals that are out here, and you have to kind of weed through what I call the dampening field. And the dampening field is what Sacha is talking about, these hidden agendas, these agendas that have plagued the native people here for years. And that is our correlation of our capacity to travel through the space. And I'm not just talking about the physical space here, but allowing our spirit and to bring spirits here when we cross-pollinate in a function where, now think about it. Look at the difference between someone who is birthed here and brought here through a condition, a state of rape, which is antagonistic. You're calling for the spirit as you're pollinating. There is no love. There's no calling in something that is beneficial for our mankind. Well, this is why I got into the quantum grammar, is because as that spirit came here and was docked here, it was docked in a way that it went on contract. Well, that contract itself is what slaves our fellow mankind and binds us to these performances that are superficial at best, done on ritualistic, ceremonial mechanics that other people did not agree to. Because our sovereignty is, everybody's sovereignty, is the ability to tune into that energy and bring that down here so that we can manifest it for our fellow mankind in a way that is righteous. What's wrong with the little righteousness? What's wrong with projecting kindness? Instead, we have many people in the news media who only project nonstop the negativity. So we need to be able to break through that projection of that negativity and put it into a way where, hey, as we're cross-pollinating and as we're having the surrendering of our spirit in that love or in that moment of euphoria to bring something here. Let's look at it in a way where, hey, that spirit we're asking to come here is out of righteousness. That's something that's coming here to be peaceful and harmonic and have a harmonic resonance that's beneficial to my neighbor, right? What's wrong with that? Instead, we're looking at all this negativity and this constant bombardment, and they're saying that they need to depopulate us because it's all negative. Instead, we need to look at ourselves and be sovereign to ourselves and find that movement through the what you would call the energetic magnetic field, the tube that you find yourself in, the crystalline way that you move, and ask for things to come through that in a way that helps our fellow mankind. This is why I got into the quantum grammar, and some of the things that I have found here is that placing a performance on words in a now space scenario in a positive way will then create a manifestation, a mirror to a performance that can help my fellow mankind. And so that's why the quantum banking system, I set it up in that mannerism. That's why it doesn't really need micromanaged. What it needs is competent cognition to allow sovereign beings to generate their biosphere, so to speak, and allow that biosphere then to have attachments and tethering to other biospheres to then allow harmony and harmonics and change the harmonic resonance of who we are so that we have honesty with our fellow mankind. And it starts with yourself, right? You have to be honest with yourself. You have to figure out what that is. That's where the alchemy starts, is with yourself. It does not start with someone else. Your ability to comprehend that, to me, is moving you into the now space. That's knowledge, it's comprehension. But it's multifaceted with a dampening field that is actually not a dampening field. if you look at it from a different perspective, right? These things that we're projecting, we need to turn that off and tune that out and manifest things of help, of kindness, of you know what? There are people out here that have been brought here and their spirit has been brought here and it does not know these things. Well, the quantum grammar allows a performance now to where they can have to know, they know what the terms are. It self-adjusts the thinking to move into the spiritual cognition of performing the terms that you come to a concurrence on.
Well, I just have to say there's an energetic to the actual grammar. I'm going to say this from experience, and we'll get back to the questions for both of you. But having done these quantum healing meditations ongoing and doing healing at a core level for people that are living and dying, they have very little time left, in using the quantum grammar in the healing, it's creating a mathematical interface that the people feel immediately. It's bringing them to the 0 point immediately. And it's shifting the field of energy so profoundly, they cannot deny it in that moment. They absolutely feel it. So on that note, having had that experience again and again and again with people right now, I'm going to ask you to jump off into that next, because, you know, Russell, you are a library of perfect quantum parse syntax grammar, and we are not libraries. So how do we change the world if the grammar is so accurate and it becomes this perfect mathematical interface for contract? And contract can even be for healing in that moment. Contract with spirit, contract with the divine, contract with the 0 point in the moment. How do we let others sort of catch up to get that as well? How can we interface that?
Well, that's a two-phase question. The first part of that question I'd like to say is, as your sovereignty moves through your tube or through your area of the magnetic flux, and you call things out or you call things in, you have a choice right there. And that choice is to look at good and bad. And so knowing the causality of bad is part of the battle. But that causality also has a flip side, which is to not do bad, to do good. So we need to focus on that per se. And some of the things is what Sacha was talking about, is breaking through this Luciferian dampening field. And some of the things is we've lost touch with our natural ways. We've lost touch with our ability to have organic foods, right? Because also you have to look at yourself as your own energy plasma capacitor. And what you bring in will come out. And so we need to be able to clean that up. And part of the reason why I set up the quantum banking system is to set up biospheres where cognizant and people that are in that field for alternative growth on foods. Doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, I don't have to be judgmental towards that because there's so many geniuses out here, right? There's the monoatomic fields. There's a lot of ways to grow the capacitor that we're just not given when you start breaking down 33 atom clusters. I don't want to get into the topics of the monoatomics, but I'm the guy that published the monoatomic periodic table in 2009. And I was pulled off the streets by the NSA and the Department of Defense here in the United States to have a conversation, because I changed the orbital cloud on the 33 atom clusters into a positive performance. That way that I wouldn't harm my fellow mankind. I became a positive being within the structure of who I am. And I wanted that for my life because I wanted to make changes in my life. That's why I got into the quantum grammar. I want to make changes for accountability in my life. I wanted to be cognizant that I didn't want to harm or hurt other people. And some of the ways that we do that is we clear our minds, we meditate. We're able to free ourselves of that dampening field and then put our volition onto something that is positive for our fellow mankind. And so I've focused a tremendous amount of my energy, and it does take focus. Right? Someone asked me the other day, Russell, how did you go 70 days without food? Well, you have to change your harmonic resonance. You have to totally focus everything you've got on loving those that are causing the harm to you. And the federal prosecutors used to complain to the guards, and they wouldn't let the guards see me more than once because they said I was influencing their minds just by my cognition of not allowing the hatred, because they are stuck to mechanics, administrative mechanics. I know those administrative mechanics on a global level, right? So how can I be angry with that person who is stuck in a scenario where in his own cognition, he feels he's doing the correct thing because he has to provide for his family, right? How can I be angry with that?
Well, that's a good point. Let's hold on that. Now, Sacha, how would you, from your perspective, in dealing with all the different people around the world and speaking to all the heads of state and all the people that you talk to around the world, how would you change that mechanics? How would you suggest we go about shifting this so the mechanics for those that are stuck in the paradigm can actually change? What would you suggest?
So I like the question because I mean, I can only answer it by speaking to what I've learned firsthand, and I'm only interested in authenticity now, and I have no interest in the law of first report or the law of second report or the law of third report. I have only interest now in what is it that my eyes see, what is it that my ears hear, what is it that my hands touch, what is it that my heart senses, what is it that my mind knows. What is the connection of my feet to the sacred soil, the connection of my crown to the dielectric universe? These are mine. This is my realm, my kingdom. I don't seek a permission. I certainly don't solicit anything from anyone ever. My engagement with power is only been facilitated by the grace of God with absolute equanimity and ease. And there's no one I've not been able to contact and sit down with and communicate with. And I think it's because I have a foundational irreverence for the myth of power. Yeah. Foundational irreverence for anything that seeks to impose itself. Because in and of itself, it doesn't exist unless I give it credence. And this is connected, I think, a little to what Russell was speaking about being a plasma capacitor. When we are, that's exactly what we are. We are transduction, transducer, plasma projection technology phenomena. That's what a human body is. We transduce limitless, ineffable, majestic pranic energy into this form, and we can broadcast that hyperdimensional divinity into this holonomic field of limitless possibility, and we can manifest anything at any time. We can bend time, we can suspend time, we can invoke Merkaba, and we can time travel. With the human body doesn't require a wristwatch or a microchip. It doesn't require a spaceship. It doesn't require a Pleiadian anything. It actually has it all wired to the RNA DNA. But my answering the question is that knowing that as I do, that the Atman, that the so-called I am, the Christed aspect of supernature, the superluminal aspect of the ineffable self with the capital S, knowing that creature as I do, and being so deeply in love with the beloved, which is that creature, which is the I am able to observe all the vaudeville of this world with equanimity and with, I guess it's a kind of love or empathy, exactly what Russell mentioned, that having that capacity to be able to not identify beyond a certain point with the myth of what's out there, but to see it absolutely for what it is, which is all part of this tremendously, again, limitless, tragic comedy. Within the 3D temporal realm I'm speaking about, there are other realms of existence which aren't so fucked up, you know. We're talking about this one here.
Well, you have a call to urgency right now. Your call to urgency in the world is very pointed. You're saying, people, wake up now. People, this is time now. So in what you just said, that is all true. However, there is an urgency for now. So that brings us back to the now space. What is the urgency and why now?
Well, the urgency is the awakening within the, in my reductive terminology, is the clear and present existential need to awaken from within the thrall of the archonic Atlantean light, the fallen light of Atlantis. We are living in a echo chamber of the closure of the last great epoch, of this last great seeding of humanity. And in order for us to truly move into the next great shift or next great unfoldment, we are required to fully redeem and fully absolve all of that fallen light, all of the so-called louche, all of the antimatter. When Russell was mentioning about his capacity in that state of grace, because what he was describing, forgive me, I'm speaking for you, but I know what you were referring to. That 70 days that's about grace. That's all it is. That's a state of grace. And that's a dispensation of the Alpha, the Omega, which is given to any of the sons and daughters of God who are remaining absolutely in the flame of pure truth. Bada boom, that's it. Bada boom. There is no separation between me and the Alpha Omega, provided I remain absolutely in that bliss peak wave. And it can only ever be blissful. There's the irony. So treating power, the myth of authority, these draconian governments and all of this pantomime playing out, and silly little sods and silly little tits in costume, kind of lurching around the place with their tasers and their little pea shooters and their fancy bullshit. All of that is the most risible play acting. And I look upon that as looking upon, just unresolved aspects of the greater Gestalt playing out in the field. I'm not identifying to any of that. I'm not identifying, entangling self with any of it, because that's already part of the entropic model that is doing unto itself. I don't want to keep rambling on this subject, but that my sense is to be very dispassionate, to be on a certain point, and disidentified with the myth of power. That for me is how one moves into that state of grace or Atman.
That is a study that I've had for 20-some years with the light and sound. And the light and sound is the progenitor for the shift. And so if they block our light and sound input, now we have what I call static, which I'm seeing more and more of in people's systems. And if there is a now, would now be the time to interrupt that static? And is the static interruption truly with love? Is it with quantum grammar? Come on, you two, this is wide open for you.
Let the chief answer.
It's blissful for sure, right? And so in that state of bliss, you are in a position of neutrality. And that neutrality attracts other neutral, because in 0 point or in neutral, that's where all the action occurs in the quantum field. And so at that point, you can make your choices, whether, like Sacha was talking about, the quantum tanglements. Does he want that quantum tanglement to witness, or is it just cloaked out his capacity? He's cloaked out the capacity. How should I say it? He no longer minds because he knows that they no longer matter. And so because of that, you move past their capacity to hurt you. And once you know that they cannot hurt you because you are the manifester of your own state, and you learn about some of the things that are out here, they dampen the monoatomics and some of the things that create ambient superconductivity within our bodies, within our crystalline structure. As we learn to open those up and feed those, you will see like the paradigm will actually shift. And now you have to be cognizant of where your thinking is. Now you have to be cognizant that you're not projecting those thoughts that influence negativity, that kind of create a bell curve to hurt your own self. You don't want to meet the enemy and he be yourself. And so I always tell myself that, love myself and love others. And the more I love on myself, the more love comes out around me. And people, I try to help them at every turn of my life. It's been a journey where what battles to pick and which ones not to pick. And in the corporate world, we're stuck in this phenomenon where they're terraforming everything, which is, I'm not for I'm for terraforming if the culture accepts it. But when you destroy a person's location, either through the mechanics of social engineering, through the mechanics of food, through the mechanics of always striving for wealth, there's an abundance, as Sacha knows, there's an abundance of wealth everywhere on this planet. Right. It's just the facts of, can you open and peel the onion peel to the right level to allow it to all manifest. And so the wealth that they're holding against the people of the world, that's an unfair thing, because, they've preached so much about the lust and the vanity and the power that they've set this runaway situation. I'm not going to say that it was a bad thing. It's just that it's what they were doing at the time. Right. And so, but things change, and education and knowledge gets into place by the citizens of the world, who are all sovereign in their own thinking. The sovereignty is what value do they put on the choice that they make once they know that they can make the choice? Do they make a choice where it harms their fellow mankind, or it continues to enslave our fellow mankind? I often wonder, in another galaxy, in another space, there was a guy running around, his name was Adolf Hitler, and he had a bunch of minions with him. I often wonder what it feels like to be a minion for someone like Bill Gates or Fauci or some of these other guys. What spirit is actually there? And if any, correct. So then you can, but there's technology that we have in place that we can isotope that, right? But you just have to catch them all in the same location and then do a few little things, but that's another conversation for another conversation.
That's Davos. Is that what you're saying, Sacha? At Davos?
Davos, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were there, Russell, to hear that they told you flat out that they wanted to enact this. They wanted to do this. You took them to task. You did.
I was very blessed. A lot of doors opened for me, but I opened them through knowledge and the courage to be in certain locations, right? And I had a business partner that, was kind of making deals with what he made deals with. And so that also facilitated a lot of things for me. But I made the choices when I got there, when I did see the good and the bad, I made the choice to do the good. And most people don't have a perspective of what was going on at the time to comprehend fully what that means. But I have not used that technology to harm the people. So people can take a look at that forever they want. I believe that a sovereign is his own leader. Doesn't need me to tell him what to do, right? Doesn't need me. All I do is look at the performance of contract and the structural 3D paradigm that we're in on the grammar. But it's not my job to micromanage any of these guys, right? That's why you have all these people saying different things. They're doing this in quantum grammar, this, that, and this. Well, that's their paradigm of their education, which is limited to based on what they've been through and the experiences and the things that they've brought to themselves. I'm not going to be judgmental against that. That's not my job. My job is just simply here to say, hey, here's a vessel and here's a tool of banking or military or whatever. Can we use this how does that benefit and no longer destroy the planet? The reason why I got into the chemical side so much is the monos, of course, but on the metallurgy was to not destroy the earth, right? There's no need to destroy and mine the planet, right? There's no need for the fossil fuels and it's just a total taxation on the hydrocarbons, right? That's the reality. But the taxation doesn't really need to be there because there's wealth everywhere. How much is enough? How much wealth is enough? You can take the wealth that you have and you can create certain energy situations and you can self-grow it forever if you so choose, right? Because you can change the angstroms, you can do all kinds of stuff, right? They're very aware of this, very cognizant of this, but to what ends? To what ends and to what is enough is enough.
Well, when is enough going to be enough? When is this actually going to change, and who's going to change it now? Where does this come to?
It comes within each and every one of us. And it's up to us to be a light or a position where people can say, hey, wait a minute, what Sacha's saying has a lot of relevance here. They're talking about this concoction that they want to jab you with, and that concoction changes our structure of our system and tethers us into another place and separates our consciousness and plays all kinds of games. And some of the things that Sacha was discussing on his last podcast made complete sense to me when you look at some of the organizations around the world on a paramilitary situation, on a scientific situation, where they've created the essence of and worked on the art and the cunningness of capturing spirit as it leaves the body, as they try to capture the energy. And so my concern, as I watch the jabbing and the things that are coming to the earth with their concoctions, is are they replacing the consciousness with something else, with another consciousness that caused harm to the world? I don't know. I don't have the answers because I'm not there firsthand doing it. Maybe Sacha can shed some light on that for me. Where is the bound? Who is watching that?
Well, go ahead, Sacha. How do you feel about that?
Just paraphrase the question as you understand it, Winifred, so we're all on the same track.
Well, Russell's asking basically how consciousness is being extracted, and what is that then doing? Are we on the path of consciousness extraction, and then how do we get by that?
Understood.
How are they
So yes, when we talk about the chemical cocktail, I'll call it a lethal chemical cocktail, which is all about systemic genetic interventionism. We're talking about taking biohacking to the degree of hacking into the fabric of human soul. So we've had 15, 20 years of clever little twats in Silicon Valley and in the liberal intellectual class of scientism. We've had them playing around with biohacking and things like this. But really, that was just front of house. That was window dressing. What's been going on subsequent to the high crimes of Dr. Mengele and the Nazis of the Third Reich has been a very steady, very incremental emergence of the Fourth Reich. And that has now landed squarely on planet Earth. We are absolutely in national socialistic, communistic Nazification of humankind. The Second World War fulfilled its function to perfection with the genesis of the Prescott Bushes and the emergence of the global satanic central banking cartels, the European Central Bank issuing off that, the United Nations, of course, issuing out of that basement with its steady by stealth stranglehold over all of the currencies, all of the exchange, all of the transacting of human beings, up to and including social media in recent days, when we see the proxies of those same generational sociopathic Satanists, and I'll name them happily here because they're not ensouled creatures. I'm not concerned, but the Zuckerbergers and the Dorseys and that echelon of proxies. Gates is one of them. Gates is an old man now and a distorted, venal old turd in a cardigan, as I referred to him, and his wife. But they are also proxies. I have been generational proxies of the same old tired story, which was a draconian off-world element through the egregore and the archonic elements beaming directly in, vicariously living through this proxy class, who themselves were steadily bred into positions in media, in academia, in entertainment, in politics, obviously, and in banking, and also in the religious and ecclesiastical enclaves of the Vatican and so on. And so it's the whole of the apparatus of supremacy and dominion the great interventionism of technocracy, bureaucracy, the Catholic Church, the parent corporation, and all of the corporations masquerading as governments that fall within the thrall of that parent corporation. That entire apparatus has been the preserve of and the devise of that same draconian egregore. And so all of these creatures that more or less inhabit the public health administration, in the case of Anthony Fauci, just look to him and his true lineage. I mean, who this man is, we know. It's a little difficult to speak about, but we've studied these creatures and we know where they issue from. And we've also run scalar,
that's fascinating, by the way. It's wonderful doing this. I love it.
Of course. When you talk about isotope frequencies, not many people know more about that than the chief here. But the fact of the matter is, part of the great revelation now and the great unfoldment is the fact that and it's almost like a blowback with this alien tech that was drip fed into the military industrial basement. It kind of leached out and good scientists got hold of it and have actually applied much of that torsion, scalar, and quantum element and purposed it and tooled it for good. So now we can actually see these buggers around corners with scalar. For instance, we can get their soul register, we can register their frequencies and so on. And then of course there's counterpoint. There's how does one disarm a leviathan that has managed to infiltrate a human being? I can tell you happily on your show, because I'm in edified company here. But I did witness in 1995 a full-blooded so-called reptilian creature. And I know that when that thing manifested in front of me in the middle of a perfect afternoon in London, and a proxy had come from Italy, a woman, as the harbinger of that creature. And it was very, very high magic and witchery that was besetting me in order to kill me on that fine sunny day. I know that now. And at the day, I realized it. But that harbinger came in, sat down for a conversation, having come all the way from Italy for an important meeting with me. I was a rock and roller at that time. I was going about my business. I wasn't involved in any of this stuff. And that woman went into a trance, a catatonic state in the middle of the conversation, whereupon I thought she was having a seizure and thought, is this a candid camera? Is this a joke? What's going on? But she literally went into a catatonic state like this. And as she did that, I turned and saw this creature that manifested in my living room. And it was 13, 14 foot high. It couldn't stand up. So it was crouched down. It was what I'd later learned by seeing various images was what you would call a full-fledged imperial draconian, lizard. Not a nice creature, disgusting creature, and a terrifying one. But the point is that I survived that exercise by throwing myself into a wall to try and escape it. She was still catatonic. I couldn't get past it to get to the door. And my brain computed that if I threw myself through the wall, I stood a better chance of surviving, getting my atoms through a wall than by trying to bypass that creature. That's how the brain worked. As I hit the wall, I momentarily concussed and knocked sense into myself. And what happened was my Atman came to my rescue because I realized that my brain computed there was no escape. I've never even taken a magic mushroom in my life. No sober man will ever know. So this was not under the influence of anything. But the point is that my Atman came in one moment of perfect compression because it was that or die. And I knew that thing was absolutely going to eviscerate me. And what happened was I instead recognized in a perfect moment, in the geometry of that perfect moment in time, I went into that still point that Russell mentions, because that was the only way of escape, was pure truth. And the pure truth in that instant, I kept my eyes wide open, internally and externally. And it taught me that creature that was there, that salivating, disgusting, draconian creature, was there representative of the sum total of millions of years of unresolved aspects of the forging of my own soul fabric.
Wow, that's
so I own that as the greatest gift that ever came and presented itself to me in the 3D temporal plane, because it gifted to me the Atman. And boom, the minute I owned and knew that truth, that creature had no thrall, and it literally popped out of manifestation. The witch, the woman, woke up out of her catatonic state in a panic when she saw that she'd lost the battle, and I physically assaulted her. Only time I've ever laid hands on a woman. I physically assaulted her and threw her out of my home. I was so wired up. I mean, I just almost met my maker in the most horrendous kind of sci-fi way. But that's a true story that actually happened. And that for me was how I came to grips with that still point. In the worst, because I'm stupid, I'm one of those people that doesn't get to that great elevated state of mind through Zen. I get there by a baseball bat in the back of my head. But that's how I came to that reckoning, the great reckoning.
I know that feeling.
Well, that's a beautiful story, and it reminds me of one that a living master that I've studied under for many years also told. And she was a flight attendant, and she would fly back and forth over Europe, and she flew over Vietnam. And she was going over Vietnam at one point, and the very same thing happened to her, actually, but in a hotel room. And she got on her knees and asked Spirit to reveal the inner truth of that. And that then began to fade and turn into a light and a white feather. All the energy was taken and neutralized, and the fear was neutralized. Like you just said, you took yourself out of that. You went to the still point and you came out the other side. But the realization is no less shocking. You didn't expect that. And yet look at what you got, but you moved through it by connecting. So this is the example. When people connect to that, you're saying their spirit, God, the higher power, that which they are in their most elevated state, and default to that. Now you have the opportunity to move through that. So, Russell, I can see you.
When you're in that state, you either get through or you surrender. And if you end up surrendering, it's because you've made the choices, even though you knew the difference between good and bad. You've made bad choices the whole time. At that point, you would have, if Sacha would have made those decisions in his heart, in the very essence of who he is as in finding ourselves. And I'm not speaking for Sacha, but for my own witnessing on some of the things I've been through. If he would have been negative in his crystalline structure, he could have been swayed over to come under that spell. And so guard your spirits and guard your thinking. I would very much say that to people, especially if you're using the quantum grammar and you're going into situations. Always meditate before you go, and always think about, asking for a higher connection to give you the words that you're going to speak. I never know what I'm going to say. It just comes out. I mean, I don't, people ask, well, where did you know to say that? Well, I connected into something that is beyond my capacity to fully comprehend, but I test the spirit, and I'm meditating and focusing my volition that righteousness and good comes out of the whatever situation I'm in. And so the people that are using the quantum grammar, test the spirits and know them as you move into a corporate structure. If you're boarding a foreign vessel in dry dock, a foreign vessel in dry dock is something that you have to use your identification to move in and out of. Okay, so let me clarify what that is. So like a courthouse, right? When you go into a courthouse, you have to go through security, and in that security, you have to show your driver's license. Why? Or your passport, because you're engaged in a shipping commercial chattel where they only see the nom de guerre at that point. And so there's things there that I've created a juxtaposition, a trust within a trust, so to speak, to allow the citizens that use the quantum grammar to function and control. I'm not going to direct their world. That's the beauty of what's been done here. I don't have people get to direct their own world. It's not up to me to manage them. That's why I say I don't micromanage this. It's copyrighted material. but it's open and free to the whole world, right? But it's not open source, because if you go open source, then you let people off of the accountabilities that they've already, the atrocities that they've already committed. But once you capture all those bad guys up, well, then you can open source it for the world, and then you can just put volition or people's thinking on trial. But if you try to open source out the chute, then you see like Bill Clinton using, Dave's student, depends on what the definition of is, right? Showing that all words are noun or verb, just depending on what's in front of it. And so you don't really want to open source things at that point. But once the isotopes and the stagnant beings with no consciousness have all been kind of put in their own place, so to speak, their own check, and then they're kind of what we call backdropped out of the way, because they're no longer in the projection field of who we are, because we're already tuned into something that is far beyond just me trying to find the right spirit out there, but to have direction and commune and to talk and to engage in contract on a galactic scale. Well, this is where the power of the bliss, knowing that you're omnipowerful for yourself, but that power does not trespass upon somebody else's path or projection of what they're trying to accomplish. So these are some of the lessons that are not taught. And when you're talking about sovereign beings, they're not thinking in those terms. And so they're trespassing and don't even know it. Just the cognition isn't there, because they don't comprehend that it's much bigger than just saying you're a sovereign or having your own money, or it's far beyond that. It's the choice you get to make between good and bad. And so in the now space, and the grammar then allows you that performance in the now space to always be now. So, I'm bound in contracts, and some of the contracts are pretty, have caused me a lot of harm in my life, right? Of my own not knowing. And I learned what I did know, and the contracts that I'm bound to now still have significant bearings on my heart, right? Because I've had to adjust and make sacrifices. And in that, I know that for whatever reason, I made those terms. I come to concurrence with those terms, and I perform in those terms for whatever reason. Those were the terms that I agreed to, and I got to stick with it. And so it's that I want people to recognize that about the sovereignty, and kind of cross-reference into what Sacha was saying about the spiritual side, because it is a very, very actual thing that will factually happen to you, and you have to be cognizant of it as you set up the parameters that benefit our lives, because only the sovereign knows what benefits his own life. Right?
Well, Russell, is it true that we're all given a God-given right to be here and to exist, and just in our birthright, we have the right to connect without anyone else's permission to connect, and or have to have necessarily a pathway, because the pathway is a God-given right. So how then does the grammar and having a claim of the life affect one when you already have that given birthright? How does that help, or how does that change that?
It allows you, because remember when I was talking about earlier about the cross-pollination, about coming here and how you came here? Well, a lot of times, Winifred, you have to be cautious, because as things come here, they've already set the terms in the heavens or made contracts or covenants elsewhere to come here, right? So that the terms have already been set elsewhere. When you get a claim of the life, it gives you a position to make a sovereign choice to send that cognition back, saying, hey, the choice that I made to come here to create harm, I'm going to now stop and correct, because that's the beauty of life, is everybody has the right to stop and correct. There's a lot of bad guys out here. Unfortunately, you can't prove if they got a conscience or not, some of these guys, right? I know some bad dudes, right? And they come up and touch you a certain way, you'd be on the ground, you'd be soulless, right? I know some bad Jose's that run around here, and they're thinking in some of the energy movements that they have the capacity to do. Well, they learn that through whatever means. And I'm not going to be judgmental on what that is. However, they have the right to stop and correct that. When you get a claim of the life, it brings accountability to you now, so that when you do tether in and do tap in, guess what? You can stop and correct wherever you're at now. You can make the choice to do good for your fellow mankind. You can make the choice to love. You can make the choice to care. You know, caring. Where's the news articles about the good people out here that are helping people with Meals on Wheels, trying to support just our day-to-day functions to eat, sleep? And this is what the quantum banking system, what I'm tendering to the world is, we don't have to have that yoke upon us anymore. We can create the utopias of our own cultures in our own locations. Therefore, other people can come visit as guests, right? You can gift them into your world. And upon gifting them in the world, you can share your culture. There's nothing wrong with that. But you don't force culture.
If we go back to the we go back to the, I know we gotta kind of move back into this. If we go back into the sovereign right that you have in your connection to spirit. Now you're saying in your point there that some come in to interfere with that. Would those be the testers? Would that be, you know, there's a big universe out there, and there's certainly hundreds of thousands of universes just within the astral plane, not to mention the higher spiritual planes, which are more refined and subtle energy. And so if sound is the origin of all things and light is the conductivity of the sound frequency as we move into harmonics, how would anyone have a right to upend our world as we're seeing right now? Or is this illusion of that, is the claim of the life just something that helps us safely navigate in this now space, in this time? Or what is the purpose of it moving forward? Let's say we have the golden age and we're in it. Do we even need that anymore?
Sacha, me? Me?
Go ahead, Russell.
You're qualified to answer that question.
Go ahead, Russell.
I've got something to say to this, but please, I need to defer to you first.
I take a look at it in many full facets there. That's a great question. You take a look at a guy like Elon Musk, right? Here's a guy that's trying real hard to get off planet, and he's trying real hard. Do you think anybody really wants him to get out into space and spew more fiction grammar lies? Do you think that's really wanted out there? Do you think that in the galaxies that the celestial beings are looking to have more fiction grammar contracts and lies being spread to them? No, because the thinking moves things out there, right? So now the thinking, as you move, the thinking moves things, right? Because it's not so much script, right? But the script holds you accountable for the performances, for your performances out there. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants Elon Musk to escape out of the galaxy. Nobody wants the fiction grammar of his manifest charter on his bill of lading to navigate out of the galaxy. Why would we want more lies out there? So when I look at some of these guys doing some of these things, and I question, well, great concept, little strange way to go about it, if you ask me, but great concept. But who wants more lies in the galaxy and the celestial beings? You have the Atman, as Sacha would say, and there you have choices of gods. Right, you have choices out there, or whatever you call your gods. Right? I'm saying plural, right? So as you enter into contract with them, they already know the condition of your heart.
I agree. Right? I've actually experienced that. Have you, Sacha?
They already know, and so the quantum grammar is for this paradigm here, but it does bind you. As you're bound in earth, you're also bound in the heavens. And
that's where I'm going next. That's exactly, I love that point, truly, because we were talking about portals. You were discussing moving in and out of like courtrooms. But how does that then extend out into the universe? Because you actually have captured in your system off planet?
It depends on the magnetic flux and your ability to capacitate and project out of that. And so you have to set up your field.
I
And
think that's a good.
is that a pretty?
Sasha, go ahead.
I like that answer, because what Russell just said is the only answer. It depends entirely on your capacity to carry the vibral light. But I just want to touch a little bit on third-party interventionism, because all of these noble and lofty notions of where we can steer plasma and how we can project into the greater cosmos is all moot, so long as we are still being molested, apprehended by this satanic technology called government, which in and of itself is evil empire. That is the Borg. That is the apparatus of the egregore. And we have to absolutely, alpha omega, bring about a dissolution of that third-party interventionism, so that the Catholic Church, the parent corporation, they have the high street, consumerism, materialism, all of those isms are connected to that false light. They all have to be consciously brought into dissolution before we are freed of those shackles. And the only way that they can be brought into dissolution is by us bearing the capacitance of that light. So that is correct. That is the only thing that will bring about the dissolution of the archonic, of the false light. Yeah.
Let me just ask you really quickly, because Sasha spoke earlier, made a tremendous point about Atlantis and the finishing up of the choices that took place in the Atlantean age of Atlantis. And now here we are again. We've come around the bend. We've come around the pole. We're a little different positioning. We're suddenly finding ourselves at a vectoring point that perhaps we don't want to be in. And yet, if it's perfect, if all things are perfect, if we fold it into the 0 point or the now space, would we then correct automatically where we left off? And would that time and space continuum come together? What do you think, Sasha?
I think that's the nature of fractality, that yes, absolution is absolute. Absolution is absolute. And we're talking about absolution here, to absolve the wrong entanglements, because one wrong entanglement equals a trillion. It's the same thing. One misstep at the top of the mountain means that you are 3,000 kilometers off course at the bottom. So, the orchestra of chaos is factored into the holonomic principle of the abyss, which we inhabit, certainly within the 3D temporal realm. But once that alignment to alpha omega, to source, is absolutely center of the white flame, then we cast no shadow whatsoever. There is no flux. There is no deviancy. There is no element of dystopia. Yes, in my understanding of the laws, the ultimate laws of the omniverse, yes, every fractal instant of timelessness is the quanta within which we can absolve all of that orchestra of chaos.
Russell?
This is why I concur with that. And this is why it's our ability, have hidden our ability to find ourselves in space. And they have the zodiac in front of us, right? And then you have your numbers of your time, 12 zodiac, 12 time, 12, 1 through 12 on your time. They make you bound in time here. But it's the ability to be timeless without time, which is now, right? 0. Right, that now moves the contract outside of what they call their paganistic ways, or whatever you want to call it, Dagon, or what the Pope's mitre, or whatever the heck you want to call their thinking, their little harness that they got on their little genitor eggs, or whatever they call themselves. It's quite a fascinating thing to look at on a quanta side, but when it comes down to it, it is the fractal of the suspension neutrality of the magnetic flux, and your capacity to direct that in a way that's beneficial not only for what you're doing, but for everyone around. And I look at it like this. Here in our country, the United States, I was able and I was privileged enough to have the United States Postal Service open up the Benjamin Franklin Museum for me specifically and open up all the glass casings. So I got to go in and read the books on the bankruptcy. So I positioned myself in space knowing that the United States government was coming out of a bankruptcy when they borrowed the money in 1775. And so I figured things out on a shipping, on a corporate level, and I made, when they came out, to me, I became a position of timelessness, right? I was no longer in a space of time because I presented everything in my contracts in a now space using positive words on my contract and taking out the negative connotations for positions that I was claiming. And so I was kind of first in space, first in the only one in line, so to speak, because I was blessed enough to have the foresight and the energy, so to speak, to be directed that I got to be in position for this bankruptcy here in the United States when the federal government ceased to exist in 1999. So timelessness and I correlate that to very much similar what Sacha's talking about. So thank you.
Gentlemen, what is the purpose of the four-chambered heart?
Well, I've never heard of a four-chambered heart, so by all means, I'll pass that one on to Russ.
Well, man, you're having me. I don't know about a four-chambered heart. The purpose of what are you considering the four chambers? Let me clarify that first.
Okay, well, the heart is the interface to the soul, or the oversoul, which is an interface to the spirit. And so there's always a physical aspect and then one more door. One more door. So in this human construct, what is the biomechanical reflection of the heart as it speaks to the functionality in the now space of how you move through these? Because the heart literally acts as a portal, but I'm wondering how you see that. The heart is the most important organ in all beings. And it is, if the heart gets corrupted, it's not the mind. If the heart gets corrupted, all things go astray.
Well, I look at, do you want, Sacha, do you want to handle this or do you want me to handle it?
I'm after you.
Oh, well.
I'm happy to jump in.
I look at it a little different because I'm looking at the heart is part of a capacitor. And so if we feed our the iron and our carbon and the some of the silicates that are in our body, if they're at a high functioning level, the magnesium and some of the other things that allow our capacitor to open our heart, so I look at it a little different than probably what you're thinking there, but maybe that's my perspective from a chemistry side. So I do apologize if.
Now let's look at 3 verses 4 for a minute. This is kind of what I'm getting at. And we don't have my backdrop because our technology got askew this morning. So we aren't looking at the quanta backdrop of the sacred geometry that I normally have. And that is the 3 sides, right? But when you're looking into a body system like we do as medical intuitives, you're going to see more. You're going to see the energetic flow and the different chambers of things. And there is an extra energy flow to the heart. So as you work in the monoatomics and you look at all the energy fields, what is 3 to 4 in this? Because quanta speaks with 12 mathematics of 12, and it also speaks in zeros and ones. But what is 3 and 4, and how does that matter to us as we move forward? Because I think the heart is integral to where we're headed.
If you're asking that question to me, this is way over my head because I've not ever intellectually pursued these notions. I can tell you that from what I'm deducing from the general gist of this interesting conversation is that for me the heart is not the thing, and 12, I dispute the number 12 in the first instance from top down. I understand the power of 12, of course. How can one not? But it's the power of 13 that to me becomes the real intrigue.
Amen.
And in much the same way that the 1260 time is fallacious, it's an abomination. I'm not suggesting the number 12 is an abomination at all, but I'm suggesting that 12, the sacrament, is being inverted in a sense. What happened to the house of Esophagus, the house of the serpent, of the dragon, the 13th house of the horoscope. So we've always been blindsided to that seminal aspect within the numerological constructs. We have been also spellbonded into believing that 13 is unlucky, for instance, when all that was a means by which we were invited not to look at the 13th house or always regard 13. I regard 13 as a vital number. At least understanding it is vital to getting the majesty of 12. And in the same way that I don't believe that the golden ratio and pi, or z equals z squared plus c, with the Mandelbrottian equation of infinity, which I understand painfully well, I don't believe that any of those are the alpha and the omega. I think that they are also written into the field of dystopia. I know that because I went into those spaces in the so-called astral realm, and lived for about 2 weeks at one point without surfacing. So I became incredibly familiar with the true mysterium of the fractal logic that's taking place within the anus, the truest, most discrete elements or building blocks of creation as we understand it. And I recognize that the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians and the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians and all variously deployed these numbers like pi to the utmost extent, building the Parthenon, for Christ's sake, in ancient Greece. I mean, you don't get more perfect alignment to those principles than what was built thousands of years ago as the containment of a civilization. And yet, it hardly led us to utopia. You see, pi, golden mean, and so on, are not the truest aspect of the sacred in number. Sure. That's in the same way that the heart is a majestic thing and the mind is a majestic thing. But I would rather have no heart and no mind and only be anchored in the psionic center of the navel, the gut intelligence, so to speak. I would be happier being situated there than in the heart of the mind. That's me and what I've learned. And I think maybe I've not learned enough. But
no.
I'm just very, put it this way, my irreverence extends to having a great appreciation for the thing that is never spoken to, the ineffable, the thing that cannot be codified,
right.
or the ineffable.
The nameless light, the all it is, and that which is the light of a billion suns.
Yeah.
Yes. Russell.
When you look at numbers, I tend to look more because of the monoatomics. I look more at some of those things that the Sumerians were looking at, and looking at the golden rule and some of the things about navigating the stars. And I was more fascinated in that than the number 12 or the number 13, because for me, the perfect number is 0, because I'm just a microcosm in a big old world out here. And so I know that, and I just try to keep my world at a 0 point where I'm not an aggressor and I'm not in a negative condition of state simultaneously. I'm just in a state of my bliss and the love of bubble that I live in my day-to-day life. And so, if that comes from my heart, it comes from my heart. But most people know it when it comes from my performances, because I stand my ground, I put my foot in the sand, and I say, look, this is wrong, and I'm going to project positivity into a situation where the wrong no longer has the capacity to be there. And so that's where I stand.
And I think this is speaking to a little bit more of the ethereal heart on top of a physical heart, that which is overlaid. It's just like Atlantis now. We are overlaying a time frame within all the continuum of time, and we're being given that choice yet again. And so, like Sacha said earlier, we have, and you said, Russell, the capacity to choose, and we need to dig in deep and align ourselves to that Atman and to the choice. Whatever you choose, Russell, you're speaking of it being a loving choice to fellow mankind. And Sacha, you're saying if you find yourself within, you are that sovereign and you have that automatic choice to the higher self. It just becomes a natural state of being. So how do we get everyone there between the grammar and our sovereign state? How do we turn this world now? How do we change this timeline now?
Remove the third party. Removal of the third party.
For I concur.
And how do you propose that happens?
By recognizing that the third party is the fiction. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. Hit it with radionics worldwide of the projection that it's not there.
There you go.
Yeah, well, we are doing that in those quantum meditations for real, and that's where we're applying the mathematics of the quantum.
Let's just drill into that for a moment, because it's a vital question. So when I say the third party doesn't exist, it doesn't actually exist, and yet it is, in temporal terms, the single most powerful thing on the face of the earth, and the gravest existential threat facing our species. It's called government, and all of its satanic artifice, all of the public health administration, and the lethal cocktail of synthetic molecules masquerading as a you-know-what that are being, mandatorily pumped into people's arms all around the world. The masking of billions of people against oxygen and against reason and against their divine light. All of this cacophony, this abomination, this travesty, is the orchestration of evil that issues out of the idea of government, because in and of itself, it doesn't have a goddamn pulse. It doesn't exist. Try to find where the genesis point is of whoever it was who created all of this dystopia, this forced mandatory, this, that, and the other, collapsing the global economy, corralling 7 billion people into sequestration, into hiding and under house arrest and social distancing, and the dislocation of humankind from the sacred earth and the sacred sky. That is the gravest abomination ever dreamt up in the Gestalt, ever. You cannot imagine any. The Second World War was an entree compared to this in energetic terms, because the thrall of evil is so vast, so epochal right now. We've never witnessed any, and yet within that, we are here having the most enlightened conversation. So you see, it cannot see us. It cannot compute that which is real, as long as we don't call it by certain names, which are traced by certain algorithms and data mining. It's an insane proposition, but this is going to be fun. This whole journey of navigating through the belly of the beast, through the heart of darkness, as we're doing now as an awakening species. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And the geometry is always perfect in all ways, for sure. But that's my notion of government, the ultimate third-party intervention apparatus doesn't even exist. It has no pulse, and you can't put a finger on it. It is not the Queen of England. Trust me. It is not the Bishop of Rome. It is not the Secretary General of the United Nations. It is not George Twat Soros. It's none of the above. They are all themselves proxies pulled into the vortex of the thrall of the idea of the thing that in and of itself doesn't exist. So get rid of that goddamn thing, and we go back to that bliss point that Russell's talking about, where we project patterns of perfection into a perfect world.
Then would that be the absence of all resistance? Because it is resistance that is not giving way to the surrender, as Russell mentioned earlier.
Not necessarily resistance. It is your own journey. It's your own walk. It's your spiritual road that you are on, and the spiritual road that we are on. And it's all endless and it's all connected. And so from the quanta, which is like the pluralisms for the audience, and there's so many facets to that. We want to break through all that, and everyone is on their own spiritual journey in their own sovereign way and their own spiritual choice. And the cool thing is this thing that's out there, it's just going to bring everybody together. Everybody's going to get on the same page because they're like, hey, we're thinking that out of here. That's not in my world. That's not for my loved ones. That's not for the people that I care about. And so we see this as a real binding chance. So it's very exciting.
So before we close, because I just have a few more questions, please. I know this is long, but it's important. This is important in the now space. And certainly before you come west, Sacha, and we welcome you with open arms over here to bring your spirit light to this continent and to share with people as only you can share. I know you're in concert with others in doing this, and you see yourself as doing it alone, but your spirit of oration and that which you're bringing to the table is vital. It moves people, it inspires them, and this is important now. And I hope the two of you can come in concert together to do whatever is best in that now space when you come. And so we look forward to seeing you here and bringing your message forward. But what is the spiritual definition of now space technically? How do people out there listen to this and get on board and say, okay, I'm in, what do I do? What's next? What's the next step? What is that definition of the now space for them?
For me, it is the real definition is beyond any prescription of it. Honestly, I'm not trying to be trite, but the real definition is beyond the description of itself. And we fall into a danger of feedback because at the end of the day, well, certainly in my middle age, I've learned that one cannot prescribe anything to anyone ever that will last truly in authenticity. One can only move through inspiration and through radiance. So which I now mechanically refer to as the linguistic wave genetics, where I am actualized and the water in the cells of my being are carrying that quanta of actualization as a transmission or a capacitor of that limitless vibral Christed flame, then the radiance that issues off this being quite naturally is connected to the waters of the noosphere, and it's limitless in its capacity to broadcast, limitless. One could be a bit more reductive about it and speak in terms of the waveform issuing off the empathic waveform issuing out of the actualized human heart or psionic center is the waveform that carries the greatest distance, which is infinity. And so it travels everywhere all at the same time. So for me, the answer to the question is it must transcend any prescription to anyone or any medicament or any prognostication. It must be simply a matter of being in absolute authenticity, each of us, so that we do become that radiance, so that we do inspire and invoke others into enactment, into embodiment, into manifestation of that Christed quantum.
So it's a natural state of being, in other words.
It has to be. In the ultimate definition, it can only be that and must only be that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Really. Russell, I can see you wanting to add to that. Please do.
It's very beautifully put. It's limitless. But the thing that I must give caution to is that you do get a choice. And the choice is good versus bad. And so be cognizant of that as you're on your spiritual road. And so that's...
Well, I think in a way there are so many different opportunities of the tester that go on. I've seen that. And like you saw in that room, Sacha, when the woman showed up, you got the tester. And the tester is the choice. And you can choose spirit. You can choose your God-given assignment, or you can shirk your assignment, which I think is what they did in Atlantis. They shirked the assignment and defaulted to power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now we can take that back, right? Can we see this? Where's my camera? We can see this, right? And back to Lemuria. This is the giant Lemurian seed crystal.
Okay.
And move that knowledge back out into the now space for the radiance of the knowledge so that we can use that inspiration as we had previously. How can we bring that forward? How can we bring the information of the ages that have been trained away?
That is absolutely a matter of linguistic wave genetics. So I'm delighted to answer this question. The gnosis of ages is by definition the alpha omega. And that is everywhere all at the same time and never departed. The only thing that departed was the very noble and brave aspect of the divine that made a determination to splinter away from source and take a backward leap into the abyss as a pioneer of the divine.
Yes.
In order to become the progenitor of the fabric of soul and participate in the alchemizing of the creation of the fabric of soul. And we are those progenitors. We are those great noble pioneers who took that backward flip into the abyss. And we ultimately remembered ourselves and became bodhisattva. And we choose to remain in that void to continue in this incredible dance. Now, linguistic wave genetics is the aspect of ourselves in that remembering, that actualize. And then what occurs quite naturally is that the resonance within our fractal so-called DNA, RNA, which is a fractal antenna, that naturally moves into phase coherence or conjugation with the universal mind or the library of ages, the gnosis of ages. I've not read a book since 1995. I've never touched it. And I cannot bring myself to. And I so revere people and respect people who are capable of reading, but I'm not. I am unbearably entertained by the limitless library of the universal mind as it relates to me moving into that quanta of timelessness that we keep referring to in this conversation. And knowing that if there is a question that is fashioned aright, it will be answered by the God in my own heart or your own heart. And that's for me the living credo of moving into the realm of fiction, which this is the great Maya, and learning so much and never needing to move into systemic learning, but to be present in inquiry and authentic in predisposition. And that's it. So that's my answer, is linguistic wave genetics in the actualized being is the transcoder and transducer of the alpha and the omega. And that is, that's my answer.
Love that. Love that. Thank you. That's eloquently put, as always. Russell, how do you feel about that?
Well, linguistics definitely is a big part of it. For me, I had a little different journey because I was looking at the fabric of what has us enslaved here through contract. And so I looked at it from a little different perspective. Unfortunately, I got stuck reading a bunch of books. Sacha nothing I really wanted to do, but it took me down tremendous trails of military constructs and banking constructs and court constructs. And so I looked at it from what binds us here on a carnal sense, not so much a physical, a spiritual sense. So, but the spirit does control the carnal. So you have to be cognizant of both, right? Without one, you cannot. Unfortunately, as we go about our day-to-day function, while we're here now, because of this very well put, this Maya. I haven't heard that word in a number of years. Read it in many, many books, but have not seen this fiction, this fake thing that they've set up, this thing that suppresses the will and the spirit of mankind. That's the dangerous part of what's being applied here, is that the outside world that bombards us with this concoction is looking to influence our capacity to know who we are. Now they're talking about blocking out the sun. All right. Can't imagine why. Right. And so it's our ability to comprehend what energy is out there and our ability to move it, and the mechanics behind that through the quantum magnetic fields or the quantum cryptographies or chromodynamics or all the things that are out there. We can look at that and study that, but knowing how to use it and when, kind of like being in a fight, knowing when to duck is very valuable, but knowing when to lay somebody else out is very, very important tool too. So I looked at the words in the quantum now space to look at how these words and where they came from and the symbolism. And, it took me down many trails from the Sumerians to the Latins to the Greeks to all these different eras that are now in our past, and even though the symbolism is all around us. And so comprehending the symbolism of these symbols that they give us to communicate on paperwork, and the administrative mechanics behind that is basically where my study went, because I ended up being chief judge at the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as the World Court at The Hague when I was conducting the world's largest court-martialing in Washington, D.C. So what that means is when I ended up at the World Court at The Hague, because I had already disqualified the charter for the Universal Postal Union of Bern, Switzerland, that was the enforcement arm for their file stamps through what they call the clerk of court, who does the docking for contracts to come in and out of that foreign vessel in dry dock. So my study was a little different than Sacha's, because his is so correct in the quanta of the applied linguistics to create the harmonic resonance to sequester things in. Very, very valuable to know. However, I looked at it from a contractual standpoint on the math interface and grammar, which can go in and out of any language in the world and loses no deviation in my sentence structure. So that's a valuable tool as we go to navigate the stars or navigate through your galaxy. You have a tool in your tool shed that if someone wants to engage in commerce with you or contract or some sort of bailment, it doesn't necessarily have to be contract. It could be some sort of a bailment or a service or a trade or whatever. You can put that down so you can write in a math interface that will translate in the whatever tongue, whatever galaxy they're from. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. So we have more to experience yet. You're speaking of other galaxies and the interface of coming into that space now. So let's get this Earth cleaned up first before we expand out.
Well, you're not going to get off the Earth contractually on grammar unless you are correct, because the bills of the ladings for their manifests have been disqualified and they don't have the ability to get out there anymore. So the good news is the lie stops here. The bad news is, and it's exciting news, we get to clean that up. So it's fun.
Well, Sacha, if you, from your perspective, had a claim on life, what would that do for you? What in your mind would that help you achieve? What could that do for you? Oh, we don't hear you. You're muted, Sacha.
Forgive me. I'm not sure. I don't understand fully how it serves, other than that. My understanding is that it dislocates absolutely the franchising of my soul through the indentureship of registrations and all the rest of it at birth to this draconian elemental fiend called government or the state or the crown. And that to me is everything. So just the fact of that disidentification or disentanglement being made proper, that is more of an energetic thing to my mind than anything else, and a vital one is cutting the umbilical to the draconian element, which is the parasite. That is huge, energetically speaking. So that for me would be the great boon. Secondarily, the fact that one could then have fun with the realm of the fiction and beat it up a little bit and lay tripwires for it and watch it fall over. that would just be great entertainment. Call it bad karma on their part. So yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated by it.
We're going to sit down and hang out a little bit, and we're going to have a good time when you show up. We'll talk about that.
Very good.
Well, I'm with you, Sacha, in that, because at the beginning, I didn't even know what it was and what it would do for me. But I've come to understand, at least in the quantum healing realm, how accurate the mathematical interface of the spoken quantum grammar word structure really is. And I didn't know that until more recently. And I stumbled upon that in application. And it actually is creating different energy spaces entirely. So thank you, Russell. Thank you for giving us technology that is so positive. And thank you, Sacha, for your amazing heart and all of your humanitarian business and your being that which is realized and actualized to be an example. Because they always say, it just takes one man to move a mountain, one actualized individual to move millions. And putting you two together as testimony today is such a compelling conversation toward the positiveness of where we're heading. And we are always focusing on the problem seemingly lately, but the solution is equally available. It's in our grasp, actually, and it can be in a blink of an eye, I believe. And based on what you've said today, both of you, it is just a choice. It's just here for us now. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to proper introductions when we started all this because of our onboarding issues. But I'd like to go back just really quickly for everyone right now. And in case you have never met Phil Colin Russell and J. Colin Gould, he is holding the following position on our earth plane and why his grammar structure is so vital. He is the Vatican City Keymaster. He is the comptroller of the global postal currencies. He is the muster master of the Navy and the Pentagon. He is actually the paymaster general for that in quantum. And at first it's hard to believe, but it is not hard to believe when you enter the paradigm to understand the correctness. And it took me 2 years of research and interviews and time spent with him to come to understand that, just that. And there's more to go. I don't even purport to know. He is the chief judge of the U.S. Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And he is the federal judge, plenipotentiary judge. Let me say that correctly, sorry. And he is the quantum banking system solitary owner. I think that's important for everyone to hear. He is the World Central Bank solitary owner, and he is the Global Monetary Fund solitary owner. And that should be hyphenated along the way in my saying that.
You have a lot of fun with me at the IMF, I promise.
Yes. And so that's just a beginning. The list goes on and on, but to understand,
I don't need the accolades. I really don't. I want people to know that there's a solution out here, and there's things that can help.
Well, it's just so that people entering this conversation from other avenues get that perspective that you have literally changed the construct of the world with the quantum grammar system that you you fought for with your life, literally. And so that is to be heralded, that you have given your heart and soul to humanity in that way. And equally, Sacha is the founder of the New Earth Project. And he is, if you go look up sachastone.com, you will also find he is the founder of the INTJ, which is the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. And now I think Russell and Sacha could work together quite well in that to bring that forward for finality. And maybe that could come to pass. And he is also the founder of humanitad.org. So given his amazing dedication toward human trafficking and making this world a better place so that we don't have these abominations taking place in energy fields that are corrupting souls and hearts and everything else, my hat is off to you, and we welcome you here in the United States for your upcoming tour. And may this only be a stepping stone for the forward movement of what can take place next in this conversation. So I'm sorry for the interruption in the beginning, but thank you for being patient, and thank you for your continued missions.
Thank you, Winifred. Very kind. And thank you, Chief. Wonderful seeing you, and look forward to seeing you both in the flesh soon.
Very good. And please go and make everybody else's life